now call ourselves an ultra-low-cost carrier, which is to emphasize our difference from those others who might call themselves low-cost but aren't really low-cost. I mean, if we compare, for example, ourselves with EasyJet, who are the next lowest cost carrier in Western Europe, certainly, the difference between our cost per seat on a percentage basis is greater as a difference between us and EasyJet is greater as a percentage than theirs from British Airways. So if they differentiate themselves from British Airways, I think we're entitled to differentiate ourselves from EasyJet, and by default from everybody else. We think cost is important because we think we're in a commodity business. And, you know, as Warren Buffett said, the only survivor in the long term in a low cost in a commodity business is the lowest cost operator. That's why we put such importance on low cost. The good news in our business is that by lowering the fare, and this isn't true in every commodity business, it's certainly not true in the production of water, that the cheaper you make it, the more people consume it. In our business, that's true. There's huge demand elasticity. So we have two virtues, if you like. One, giving ourselves a competitive advantage by lowering the cost. But by offering lower fares on the back of that lower cost, we're actually expanding the market. And, you know, over 50% of our routes are routes that have never been flown by anybody, never will be flown by anybody, because they are a function of offering a fare at a price point that is necessary to fill our size of aircraft. So there is a virtuous cycle there of demand creation as well as the creation of competitive advantage. You're all probably familiar with, you know, some of the key aspects of that, of our business, in terms of, you know, quick turnarounds, very high people productivity. Our passenger to employee ratio is almost 10,000 passengers per employee. I've lost sight of British Airways now, but I think it's somewhere around 1,000 passengers per employee. So, you know, the productivity there is an extraordinary benefit to us. And even EasyJet is somewhere around 5,500 per employee. I use EasyJet, by the way, not to criticize them. They're a fine company, but they're certainly not a low-cost company, and I only use them by comparison, as being the best of the rest, so to speak, in terms of those parameters. The history, if we go to the US, it's a very easy history lesson about how the aviation industry is going to emerge in Europe, because all we're doing is copying 5 or 6 or 10 years later what's happened in the US. Greater concentration of activity, the market only expands by lowering fares, and that is broadly the circumstances. You have the odd bit of interference by governments, you have the odd bit of, you know, the Italian Post Office paying 75 million for a 10% stake in a company that's worth nothing. You know, this kind of blatant state subsidy, but that'll last until Christmas, and we will see the reality about Alitalia at some stage soon. Same with SAS. So ultimately, we're going to have a convergence here with 5, as we have in the US, 5 major airlines groups controlling 90% of short-haul traffic. And only EasyJet and ourselves are growing in that context, in reality. So it's a business model that has an increasing competitive advantage and also can both grow the market and take, in the case of EasyJet, market share from others. It's that their business model is defined as essentially going after the flag carriers and taking their business. Ours is different in that regard. Obviously, we concentrate on airports who want us, in the sense of that they want to be competitive price-wise. That's not to say we operate exclusively at secondary airports. We actually operate at the biggest airport in Europe, which is Madrid. Physically the biggest airport in Europe, with the second largest carrier, because you can operate efficiently there. Same in Barcelona, you can't operate efficiently in Heathrow, just the way it's made. And equally, they don't offer us low costs, obviously. And there's only 4 or 5 of those airports in Europe: Frankfurt, maybe Charles de Gaulle, and so on. But in reality, we've flown to Fiumicino, not regularly, but we could again regularly in the future. And certainly, as I said, in Madrid and Barcelona, Manchester, Gatwick, we're a big carrier in many of those very large airports. So it's not about secondary airports per se, although they're important in our network. We bring passenger traffic to airports who have a fixed liability in the ground, i.e. bricks and mortar, and they need to fill it. And bearing in mind what I've just said about the growth of the market, nobody else is going to fill it in the short to medium term, because nobody else is growing. So it's a model, in my view, that's a perfect fit for airports that want capacity. The only issue is the price in between. between who brings the value to the transaction. And so I suppose the other major change in our model from historic models, if you're to look at the performance of airlines, is that we run our airline as a business, which if every other airline in Europe does, they have failed the business. Because if you run a business, you run for the owners of the business, not for any other interested stakeholder. Primarily it has to be shareholders. And with the best shareholder return of any airline in Europe, we're making a half-decent job of that. But I suspect it's because other airlines don't focus on that, given in many cases, as in Alitalia's case, the ownership was the government. So the criterion was not to enhance shareholder value, but rather to get jobs for constituents or influential politicians or whatever it happens to be. And it's very difficult for them to shake off that model and that heritage that they have and enter a world where airlines actually compete, not through regulatory impediments to outsiders coming in to compete with them, but actually on a level playing pitch, and whoever's the best and most competitive and most attractive to customers actually prevails. That's the real world we're in now, in our view, and we've designed our model to fit that.
Thank you very much. Maybe we have two provocateurs on our panel here today.